Hi Annie and Luli, how are you girls? This is your lesson 7, reading fossils identification. Okay, so this whole lesson is about learning how scientists and even in some cases regular people like us can identify fossils. How can you read it and know to which animal or plant do they belong? Okay, so fossils can tell you a lot of things. It's like reading a book in a sense. Because when you read a fossil, you can learn about the physical record that God left us in His creation. For the vocabulary of today, we have two words: determine, which means to decide or figure out, and then the other word is identification, means telling what something is. When people first found animal bones at La Brea tar pits, the ones that we talk about in another lesson, they found what they thought were just common bones. But then, as many years passed, they realized they actually were fossils. And that experience happened a lot in the past. People were not aware that they were finding fossils. Some were destroyed or damaged, others lost, because people didn't know how to identify it. You can identify them in many ways, but I'm going to talk about two different ways. One, it's by fossil type. As you know, there are many types of fossils, and certain fossil types are more likely to be found in a place than other. You can know a lot about a fossil because of its type. Um, a mold a mold fossil of a shell looks different than an original remains fossil of the same thing, a shell. Petrified wood that does not appear the same as a cast fossil of wood. So you can identify them just by their type, which is easy to see because in some cases you know just by sight, just by looking. But some of them are really confusing and look similar. In that case, you will need an expert to help you determine it. And then the other way, it's by knowing the plant, animal, or living thing type. It's another way to identify it. It's to know to which animal or plant they belong. That's easy to see if you see the whole animal or plant. But if you see only one bone, what would you do? Then it's difficult. Then you would need an expert. But some animals are really easy to identify because their shapes are not alike. Now, the tricky part is that some animals don't leave anything, or it's rare. For example, earthworms or larvae, you don't find a lot of fossils of them because they are not heavy enough to make an imprint. Um, so that's the tricky part. They get destroyed easily. The same happens with flowers. We have some fossils of plants and they are common: pollen, seeds, cones, leaves, stems. But flowers, as I said, were rare, even though they found a large deposit in New Jersey of tiny flower fossils. But again, the same with worms, it's easy to find them because they're really light. They decay before they leave an imprint. Another common fossil is fern, and some fungi fossils have been found too. Algae, it's rare, again because it's really light, like what happens with the flowers. Um, Animal fossils, they're easy to find. It's one of the common, especially bones. But the tricky part is if you find just one piece of the animal, how do you match it? Or we have found animals that we don't have an equivalent right now because they're extinct, so we don't know what animal is it. They have found one cell animals, like really, really simple animals called protozoa, usually at the ocean of the floor. And one of the most common ones are mollusks because they are water animals. They have hard shells, so they are easily preserved. And since they are water animals, they become trapped in sediment. So that's a common one. Insects too, but that's just because we're lucky that something like amber exists because insects are really delicate. So it's just if amber formed and it protects them. Skeletons of vertebrates are normal fossils finds, especially large and small fish, dinosaur, reptiles. Amphibians, not so much. Bird fossils are rare, unless they were birds that didn't fly. So they have heavier bones and then they get easily preserved. Mammal fossils are common, something like mammoths, horse, rodents.